Mr. Brian Kerr and Kenny Cunningham are here in studio. In effect, what happened here is the lads were booked to do Premier League commentaries, and then, well, you know what happened. And so we rang them and said, we know you're available, so you have to come in. And here you are.
I couldn't
Kenny,
think of an
great
excuse.
To see you.
I couldn't think of an excuse when he put it on me toes.
Well, there was nothing on the telly today. I watched a bit of rugby early this morning, the Sevens match.
Oh, yeah.
But there wasn't an awful lot else, unless you want to watch 18 very slow holes of golf. Which wasn't really getting going when I left to come here, Joe. Anyway, so there you go.
And the cupboard was bare. Basically, the cupboard was bare. It was either this or hanging out the washing with me ma or something like that in the house.
Well, I caught a little bit of jam and stuff yesterday and so on, but it was a sad day when there wasn't a match from England on the television at all. It's a strange one. Strange one.
53106, we're here, we're live. The lads are here for the next hour. Fire in any texts or questions and we'll get to them. Obviously, a very busy week in football to discuss. It did strike me, because often when Kenny's in, we ask him questions about things he doesn't want to talk about. And he's like, oh, jeez, why are we talking about this? You know, Saipan, that kind of stuff. No, I'm not talking about this.
All right.
The negativity, you know. And I thought we had the opportunity to actually tell a nice story, which is international manager having to pick a captain, and he decides Kenny Cunningham is the man.
Oh, is that it? Is that where you're leading with this?
Yeah.
Oh, gee. Let's talk about Saipan, the head of that.
I knew you wouldn't want to talk about this.
Come up with.
Yeah.
Oh,
I want to hear Kenny Cunningham captain.
I shouldn't be. You should be asking him that question with me, not in the room.
No, I think it's nice to get the memory.
No, that's rubbish.
Can I do a Saipan on that one?
Let's talk about the lady sevens. Let's talk about the rugby sevens this morning.
It was the men's sevens this morning. Women were beaten yesterday. They had a playoff or whatever. 7th and 8th.
Come on. Let's talk about that top that you're wearing, to be honest with you. That rugby top you've got on there. Looks like, is that a Leinster?
It's just a top.
Leisure.
Is the rugby coming around again, is it?
You stop changing the subject for a second. We're going to make you blush for a second.
Let's skip on.
Why do we go there?
You didn't ask a question, did you?
It's a while ago. How did we go there? How did that happen? I
don't even know what your question is. I can't even remember.
I think the question was, how did he end up as a captain of the international team? Is it?
Will you be quiet for a second?
He was stuck with me. That was it when he walked in the door.
Was he not?
It would have been more if he'd taken that armband off me.
Was he not the captain before I was there? I think he may have already been in position. But you know, the one, I suppose there was an issue around. Roy had been the captain before Saipan. Who was actually the captain when you were playing? In
Staunton.
In Staunton was
Stan, wouldn't have been, yeah.
Would have been Staunton.
Stan stepped up, didn't he? Yeah.
Okay. So then,
were you captain for the Russia away trip and the new regime?
Yeah, Joe. I wish you had prepped us on this. Only 20 odd years ago.
Russia and Switzerland. No, it's not even that far. Russia and Switzerland, the two games in the group. You probably were the captain. So all I was doing.
Yeah, we lost both. Yeah, probably was. We lost both.
Yeah. So if that was the case, there was no issue for me then. I didn't have any problem. I did have it.
Was never a big.
I did have a discussion with Roy about it. You know, when I went to meet Roy, and I had the thing about the captaincy about. You know, my image of what I liked from the captain was obviously positionally. I never liked the idea of people having the centre forward as captain unless he was Maradona, you know, or that ilk of player who could control the whole game and win you the game if the other 10 weren't very good. I liked always to have someone. I liked the idea of the goalkeeper being the captain either. I always liked it to be someone in the back four or a central midfield player who could affect the game at both ends of the pitch and affect the players around them by leading by example, but also by giving information maybe. So I didn't see it, but you know, I also had the thing about having to turn up like as well. You know, you'd like the captain to be there for all the matches as well, whether he was playing or not playing. And so
I never, Brian, you want me to ask you, I never felt like I thought it was different international football and club football in terms of the role. The captain never felt there was such an issue at international level. I played at clubs and been in dressing rooms. You got young players, young lads in the dressing room where you think it's important that figure is actually important. You know, young lads look towards them and look for a little bit of leadership or whatever else. But in the, you know, playing at elite level football, international football, for me, it wasn't a huge issue. I never felt that was a real issue around the dressing room. Brian could have easily thrown a dozen names on the table. You know, he could have been equally as happy with any one of those players. Like, could have had just as much an influence as I had. So yeah, for me, like, it was a great honour to captain the country, but I was very conscious of the fact that any number of people in that dressing room could have stepped up. You know,
well, he'd be too, you know, he wouldn't be inclined to blow his trumpet. But for me, it was easy. Well, I used to travel with the team as the technical director, fairly for a good while. Until probably not too long before I became the senior manager. I was technical director, so in that position I was kind of allowed or asked to want to travel with the team to watch matches away from home. So when you're part of that, you get a chance to observe people and observe people's behaviour in the general scene. I wasn't in the dressing room or anything like that, but I was around close enough too. And I would have seen the lads. They'd have seen me. A lot of them wouldn't have known me too well, except the ones that played in the underage teams. Kenny wouldn't have known me. I wouldn't have known him too well either, but I knew of his career. I knew he'd played with Tucker Rovers as a schoolboy and all that. And I would have just observed, and I didn't see any way. I knew he was, you know, it'll embarrass him now. I knew he was highly respected by the other players. On the pitch, organisation, and off the pitch, and I knew I could rely on him as a fella who would have good standards about. And if I chose to say, look, the lads we go out maybe for a meal, and I'd say the lads can go out after, and I'd ask what time would you think would be reasonable for to have them back, and he'd tell me a time, and I'd say right, fine, batter away, and I knew that would be implemented as well as it possibly could, that one person could have an impact and influence on that. And that was kind of important. But obviously in the game, the reading of the game, and I'd always, like, sometimes now, you know, I'd walk with Richard Dunn, or I'd walk occasionally with Kenny. I don't know, I can't remember us doing anything for a good while together. But when it comes to talking about centre-backs and positioning, I don't always feel... I know what I want. I have a clear head about what I like about the centre-halves, and the game is changing and how the game is now. But even at that time, I had a clear picture. But I never tried to, and I'm sure you'd agree with this, I never tried to tell them how to play centre-half. Right. And I could trust people and say, and have a few words. I don't know what his memory of it is, but I'm sure I used to have a few words now and again about the opposition and say, how do you think we go, and how far up, and when we have it from the back, this is how we play it. And that was it. I left it to the captain to...
And you know, he was designated driver on the nights out as well. He was getting them home.
Yeah. Well, it was hard. He wasn't. I don't think he had a licence for the bus though. So he might have been. I don't think he had a bus. Sometimes they went out in the bus, but they didn't come back in the bus.
I noticed at the end of the nights out, towards the end of it, a few of the lads would be leaning towards him, be doing a man-to-man job with me around the pub, and I was using, what's going on here? But of course, you were thinking, right, I'm going to be the first in the back of the car, in the back of his car, on the way back to the hotel. Yeah. So they'll be guaranteeing their seats.
The other fellas trying to get you to go back to the hotel, so they didn't have to go back as early with you, I'd say, as well. But
but that was never. I must admit, that was all of the lads there were very much on the say kind of similar level. I'm not talking in terms of football ability there, but just in terms of nice, healthy respect for each other and comfortable enough in our own company that who was wearing the armband, there was never an issue. Ego never came into it. I was at football clubs and that armband gets tossed around. Oof, there'd be absolute killings and people would be, you know, in the background. There'd be kind of, you know, knife in the back job, like, you know what I mean? I want that armband. But that was never an issue around the squad. When somebody got the armband, everybody else was as proud as punch and kind of supporting them as best they could, like, you know. So that's what I'm saying. That's why I said I wouldn't want to demean the role of the captain, but I never felt it was a real issue at that environment, that elite environment, the quality of players that you have around you. For me, was, you know, it was certainly wasn't never a talking point amongst the players themselves.
No problem. Well, look, we don't have to labour the point. I was just bringing it up so Brian could say something nice about you.
Did you bring it up?
I'm happy you did, Joe,
Yeah.
because he was
Keep
a
it
great
relevant.
he was a great captain. He was a smashing captain of the team, and I think we did all right together. You know, I don't know whether I certainly respected his authority among the lads and his view on the game, which I still kind of see it the same way. I think he has a great view on the game in general and its intricacies.
Well, I want to ask you about the week that's been, because it's been interesting. But a few texts in on 53106, people asking a question or two. Two good ones I see here, right? As manager, so that's more for you. Opposition player that impressed you the most in a game? Can you remember a performance?
Well, look, when I was manager, I made the point of hustling the FAI to get better games, and I'd given a long answer to this because then when I came in, my first game was away to Scotland. That was all right, but then they had friendlies lined up against, I think, Canada and Norway and a few more like that, and I went, why are we playing these things? And I knew why, because they didn't hustle for the games. They waited till the invitations come into the FAI and then say, okay, we'll take that game because that's the game we're offering for that day. Whereas Muggins here decided, I want us to play better teams and, you know, test ourselves better, and the crowds will be into it. So we did play good games, and we played a lot of good friendly games, and the likes of Portugal with Ronaldo playing, the Portuguese Ronaldo obviously, but we played Brazil.
Yeah.
And we went to the Netherlands and won 1-0 one Saturday before they went to the Euros. But we played Croatia, who had been to the World Cup, and we played Brazil, which was a magnificent game, and the quality they had, and they had, you know, Ronaldinho, the original Ronaldo, and Kaká, and Roberto Carlos, and Cafu, and they were superb. But I think most of all, I remember I got a match. Well, I didn't get the match, but I bumped into Lippi, literally in the lift at a conference, a UEFA conference somewhere. And, you know, he didn't have much English at all, but he got the message. I said, look, will you come and play us in Dublin, you, world champions? And he went, and I said, we'll ask you, I'll get them to write the official letter, and hence we got Italy. And before the World Cup, right? And what I remember was Pirlo, because I took a bit of a chance. I was trying to change it slightly and start us playing 4-3-3, because we were a 4-2-4 team, really. You know, I say 4-2-4 because generally it was Damien on one wing and Andy Reid on the other wing, and Clinton and Robbie when we had our best 11 available. But we were a 4-4-2, and when we hadn't got it, one of the fronts dropped off and helped us in the middle of the field, all that stuff. Yeah. Anyway, we played Italy, and I, in my head, was kind of thinking, it's getting harder to survive with the two central midfield players, and more about getting the wide lads in and getting narrowed up in midfield, which with the underage teams I'd always tried to play tighter 4-3-3 with a tightish midfield. Sometimes I used to play a 4 with one winger and three tight, right? And then the full back on that side would have to get a bit of help off the front player. Anyway, that tackle. So with the senior team, I had it in my head that we're going to go this way. We played 4-3-3, and against Italy, I just remember Pirlo picking her up out the back four, and no one out of the three was getting near him, and he just had the ball all the time, and I think we were 2-0 down. And it was the first time since I've been manager that someone was outplaying us, and I'm going, I had to do something here. Anyway, we got a goal back, and I think I changed it and just went a bit narrow and went back to how we played before, and maybe asked Clinton to drop off and pick up Pirlo and stop him getting, and not worry about their back players as much as the midfield. But he was sensational, and as it went on, funny enough, when I was in the Faroes, we played Italy twice as well, and I saw Pirlo up close again, and it was a different kettle of fish with the Faroes trying to get someone to drop in on Pirlo, right? But he was the most impressive player, individual, just that skill, the range of pass, and the ability to take it no matter how tight anyone was to him, and so on. But I you know, there was lots of matches. I loved things about the opposition and respected it, but I loved our own thing about being able to deal with that. And that's what I said, the Brazil match in particular, I remember showing the lads the system that Brazil played, which was basically a kind of a goalkeeper, obviously, and then they played 2 centre-backs, 2 just in front of them, 2 behind the front. Now you talk about a box of 4 in the midfield. They had the box of 4 and the 2 front fellas. And then they just had the width came from Roberto Carlos and Carl, that right? Up and there. And I showing the lads this, but showing the individuals as well was interesting, and saying, well, you know, here's how we might deal with this. And it was a friendly game, but it was a great game, wasn't it? Do you remember?
I remember. I think we spoke about that before. Yeah. The Brazil game there, Lansdowne, yeah, fantastic.
I never had as many requests for tickets in any match in my whole lifetime.
I was at it, that's great.
As I had for that game and the build-up to that game and the game itself. And I remember their demeanour and all, even going out before the match. They were, like I imagined they might be. They were friendly, and they were jolly, and they were funny looking, and but they were strong, and they were physically.
Got the impression they weren't quite in fifth gear.
No, maybe not, but I'm not taking that.
I remember being close to the second gear and being flat out, trying to hang on to their coats.
Maybe so, but there wasn't. Anyway, it was a good 0-0 draw.
And an evening game as well.
It was great.
It was a lovely day.
People forget that young generation just no recollection of that whatsoever. Like the old stadium there, it's amazing, isn't it?
Place was jammed, and it was a lovely evening. It was great. It was a really good game. It was the tactical thing, but there were so many of their players that were so good. But it was also, but I go back to Pirlo and him running the game, and the range of passing and the little trot after the pass to be available for the next one, and so on.
There's a question in from Tom. I'll throw this one to you, Kenny, then. Is there a player who you found much better in person than they appear on TV? And what he's saying here is, this doesn't have to be someone you played against, but just actually watching a game and you're there in person going, geez, this fella's a lot better than he looks on TV.
Well, actually playing against them when I came up against them on the pitch.
Yeah, or if you prefer, then just watching from the sideline.
I need to be prepped these questions.
I've got one for you, by the way.
I tell you who... just popped into my head. Generally, my recollection wouldn't be great.
It's a liar.
It's
such a lie.
It's true. So
every piece goes along this pattern where you're like, I can't answer that, and then an hour later you're still talking.
No, but I played against. So I would have come against some good centre forwards, mainly at air level. We played. You spoke about that Brazilian team. We had France in that group. Obviously, that group we're in, Henry and one or two others as well. Yeah, but I remember. At Wimbledon, I wasn't in Birmingham, going out to Stamford Bridge and playing Chelsea. I would have been in my 30s then. Can't remember if my legs were shot down. Anyway, it didn't matter. But Crespo was playing up front for Chelsea, and I'd watched a lot of him play. He played predominantly in Italy, Serie A, and I always liked him as decent, good goal scored and record. But I'd always looked at him and thought, well, look, he's not the quickest thing on two legs. He never was like over the ground. Physically, probably not the most imposing. Wasn't like technically at the very highest level in terms of dropping the shoulder and beating people and just blow you away in terms of his technical ability, but a kind of good all-round game. So he was the type of fella I always thought, if I'm really at my game, like concentration, the whole shebang, hopefully I won't get too embarrassed by him, as opposed to the others who'd run past you, too much pace, technical ability could twist you inside out. So he was one going onto the pitch. I thought, just keep me concentration, I should be all right. But I remember it was one of the worst afternoons I had against him. But the reason was just his intelligence, brilliant, the timing of his runs. He was such a clever operator. Just never saw him play centre forward against me, but I was always looking for him for the whole of 90 minutes. Never stood in front of him, never see him. Was always looking for him. And when I took my eyes off him,
then he'd move.
Timing of his runs. You turn to look for him to be gone past you. The amount of times that he did it. And I remember thinking that Jordan the game, at the end of the game, wow, that's phenomenal. From thinking, stripping them down to the basics, thinking I can handle that. But it was what was going on between his ears, his intelligence, time of his runs. He was killing me time and time again. I remember thinking, wow, phenomenal. So it just goes to show you, like, if you have that between your ears, no matter what area of the pitch that you're in, You're a step ahead of the game already.
He's watching the game and he's always also watching you. And when you're looking at the ball, that's when he's making his move.
Yeah, exactly. He's watching me thinking, "Feckin' hell, how did this fella ever earn a living from it?"
He's captain of Ireland, that lad.
He's thinking, if I don't get a man of the match awards, I never will against this fella. But yeah, so that was, so if you're asked for that one, to the other, the stars you know about, they come onto the pitch and they don't disappoint, you know what's coming. But maybe you're right, maybe in that situation,
that's a great one.
Kind of surprised me a little bit, yeah.
Anyone for you, Brian, that you thought, I didn't realise he was that good?
Present company excluded.
In terms of, I can't think of anyone. Players, I mean, the international teams, I suppose the most difficult time we had when I was manager was the matches with Switzerland, because of what happened previously. And mixed last game, they lost to Switzerland here, and we ended up in the group. We got back. We got to play Georgia and Albania were next 4, and we won 3 and drew 1, and it got us back in. Then we played Russia, and we drew 1-1 with Russia, and then the last match was Switzerland away, and I'd seen them and obviously looked at the videos and some of the inside out. I said, what was the thing that surprised me was there was a little fella. There was the two. One of them was the manager now. Yakin Hacken.
Brothers, yeah.
Yakin Hacken and Murat Hacken, and one of them played centre forward off the front.
Yeah, that's
he was a handful. He was a handful. And the brother was centre half, and he didn't look the most mobile. He looked like kind of, a bit heavy and burly looking. The fella's manager now, Murat, but he was very, very effective. But the one that was the fulcrum of the team was the fella Vogel. Do you remember him? Little fella in the middle, kind of blondie fella, played just in front of the back 4, and it got it into him, and he ran. And I remember someone around the Liverpool asking me about him. I said he's a very, very good player. I said very underrated player, and they signed him. Then Liverpool signed him. And he didn't play a huge amount, but it was him and the Hagen fella, because the fella played off the front, where he picked up awkward positions as well, didn't he? And he could move a bit. He doesn't want to.
Bad memories, sorry. We're going to a dark place.
We'll move on to current stuff now. Do you know a fella who? Listen, he looked great on TV as well, obviously, but Nicolas Anelka in person had more about him, I found, being at a couple of games, than I realised on TV. There was an Ireland-France game, I think it was the handball game, and every time he got the ball, even if it was midfield, even if it was 30, 40 yards from goal, there was that little buzz in the stadium. Didn't come through in TV the same way. Obviously,
he probably wasn't seen as the same way though in England, because he was one of many great French players who was playing there. When he was playing the national team, there was probably something about him that they felt they could trust him a bit.
I just thought in person he moved over the ground in a way that even just looked better than it had on TV.
With them, he was like naturally, he was a runner almost.
Yeah. He was like lightning when he got going.
Yeah. Liverpool 4-1 in Napoli. They're 7th in the Premier League table, 9 points after 6 games. They're already 5 points off City. Klopp said, we have to reinvent ourselves. He said the basic things are not there at the moment. So people are talking about some kind of fatigue, physically or mentally, with Liverpool. And there's the injury situation as well. Kenny, do you see Liverpool turning this around and being thereabouts coming to the end of the season? Or is this looking a bit more serious than that?
Yeah, well, I don't think it's any of those 3 things that you've mentioned. What did you said? Physical fatigue, mental fatigue, and what was it? Well,
injuries are part of it.
No, I don't see any of them being the issues. They can get all those injured players back fit and available, and nothing much is going to change for me. I think individual performances is a bit of a drop off there. You could argue, there's a small uplift there. I'd be interested in asking Klopp, maybe just getting a bit more data in terms of what he said, that we have to reinvent ourselves. I'd love to know what he means by that in terms of the reinvention. What exactly is he talking about? Maybe their style of play.
I think
going forward, as opposed to the success they've had up to this point.
I think it was a phrase he used under pressure after match. He had done so many interviews, and he was still doing another one, and he was trying to scram, because he's normally so confident, so strong, and it flows with him after the matches. But I think he was coming through a period now where he's going, Jeepers, we do appear to be in a bit of trouble. I was able to make some allowances up until now, but now it's repetitive. We're getting caught. There's more goals, more chances. So many players are off. Alexander-Arnold in particular, Fabinho, who we would have relied on so much. The centre-back pairing, Gomez, was a disaster. Van Dijk making consistent mistakes now, or getting caught. Salah, not like a ball running all under his foot, out of play, over the end line with a chance. Ball up the line from Trent, and he lets it bounce into touch where he looked like he was comfortable. I think it was a frustration. The word he used, you're right, he did say reinvent, you called it, Joe, reinvent ourselves. I don't know whether he... But that's what he really meant. But he's obviously means we've got to have a serious look. And because he expanded on that by saying, and it should be fun trying to do it in the middle of the Premier League or during the Premier League season and Champions League. So what he's saying is, I haven't got pre-season to fix this now. It's on the go. But yeah.
Yeah, but again, I don't know what he's... I'm not exactly sure what he's talking... If he's talking about getting back to where they were previously... I don't think that's possible with this group of players, because I don't think individually they got the attributes to play the type of football that they have done over the previous few years. So they haven't got...
Why not? Physically?
No, they haven't got the players there to... predominantly in that central midfield area is kind of what we're talking about. So the success they had...
But you're talking about the defensive side of it as well. Can they continue to play the high line the way they've played it and got away with it because Van Dijk was so quick on the recovery? Gomez or Method were reliable full-backs, were generally advanced, but they recovered, and Trent isn't, and the goalkeeper was out and got them out of trouble, and he faced more one-to-ones than anyone else at that level, and they relied on him to do that.
But the big reason they got away with it, Brian, wasn't because of Van Dijk's recovery speed or his starting position, Alisson. It was about the type of pressure that they were getting higher up the pitch.
Yeah, I agree.
Predominantly wasn't coming from the front three. It was the midfield three. I wouldn't even say the midfield three. For me, it was the two number 8s who played either side of Fabinho. You're talking about Fabinho, the amount of mistakes that he's making now, getting caught out. He's getting caught out because he hasn't got that protection in front of him. And now he's getting more exposed in that central midfield there. He hasn't got the legs.
It doesn't look an impressive unit.
It doesn't for that reason. When Liverpool are at their best, when Alden and Henderson physically at their absolutely peak, just running over, suffocating teams, just pressing hard. He was the one just sat behind in the pocket, and he was just intercepting things, basically, just sitting in behind, sliding across, and kind of sweeping up behind him in that kind of number 6 role. Liverpool now, for me, don't have those players. Henderson now serious drop off in terms of his...
Well, Milner's been playing, and Harvey Elliott. That's...
Elliott's the technical player, probably not. Still developing. I'm a huge fan of him. Doesn't look as he's not going to have that type of impact in terms of physically impose themselves press as those sort of players Ronaldo, Henderson were talking about. Thiago, lovely technical player, but for me, like, my opinion hasn't changed. Can't defend, can't trust.
But he actually makes more. He made more tackles the other night now in the midfield in the period he was on in the game, Thiago. And
I've seen enough.
But he influences the game.
He influences the game in possession. This is what I'm talking about. That's all well and good. So if he's talking about reinvention in terms of, look, I'm going to move away from this kind of high pressing, high energy type of football into more technical.
That's why I don't think he meant reinvention, the whole thing.
But if he's going to go back to the way they were previously, I'd argue, well, you better go and get at least another 2 top-class midfielders, because until you do, you're not going to be able to play the game with the amount of success that you have done previously. And because of that, now we're seeing the things that Brian's talking about. Back 4 getting more exposed on more of occasions because that protection isn't there. And now the question I'd ask is Klopp looking at Liverpool at the moment saying, well, look, it's going to be another summer before I can get those type of players in. So how am I going to modify things in the meantime in terms of the high line, say, that we're talking about? But for me, when they had that bad run, what was it, 2 years ago now, they lost Van Dijk, all their centre halves.
When there was no one at the matches. And they lost.
Fabinho was playing there, Nat Phillips, like no pace at all in that central defensive position. And at that stage, they were crying out for a change in terms of, we've got to take our game 10, 15 yards further down the pitch, protect those 2 centre halves a little bit, give up possession a bit and drop off. If ever they wanted to do it, they're going to do it. And he never did it then. He insisted on that high line, hold, even though they were getting exposed, almost like this is me, this is my mythology, I'm going to live and die by this way of playing, a way of defending. So I don't think that's going to change.
You'd be reluctant to change it.
Yeah, so unless he resolves that situation, those central midfield areas for me.
But they do look like they've no energy at the moment, that they're not running as well. I mean, I would have said the other night the only one who showed the kind of energy that he's had since he came to Liverpool, which is a short while ago, was Diaz. I thought he played well in the second half particularly, but he was chasing and harrying and getting around. But the rest of them all seem to be gone back from that.
So do you think it's a
levels.
fatigue there? Or lack of intensity or something off?
I don't know. Wouldn't want to pontificate on it. I'm sure the sports science fellas, you talked a lot about the sports science earlier on the paper review. I heard that bit, which was interesting, but I'm sure they're checking the numbers and they know what's going on. But it does look like to me, I mean, the thing with Trent Alexander not running back quick enough when it goes behind him, when he's beaten, that's extraordinary. That can't be just tiredness. That's not tiredness. That's a mental attitude. It's not switching on. I don't get that at all. But Fabinho struggled physically when he was caught up the pitch. We did a match the other night on TV, and I showed that one of the goals where he went up and went in after a fella. When he went behind him, he was coming back. He was 15 yards too late arriving when the.
Yeah, but he's never been his recovery.
No, I accept that.
And this takes you back to what I'm saying. When he had those players in front of him, absolutely dominating those areas of the pitch in front of him, he didn't have to leave that area of the pitch, but he was just sat there, just sliding across 5-10 yards to the side of him, and just like intercepting stuff. Now he's getting drawn out into areas he doesn't really want to go, even higher up the pitch.
I accept that. And what's on the point Brian mentioned, Alexander-Arnold, where the ball's knocked around him, player goes around him, and he's walking back.
That's more or less the same. But that's always been.
For you?
Sorry.
What is that for you?
Well, it is a mental thing. Yeah. It is a mental thing, but. That's down to him. He's got to resolve that, and it's one of the easiest
things. The manager a bit as well, with the manager.
Well, sure, you can't tell me the manager and the coach of the past 4 or 5 years they haven't been sitting down with Trent Alexander-Arnold saying, "Listen, you're the best right back in the world, but we just need to tidy up a few things here defensively, positional sense, defending the back post area." It's the easy stuff.
That was attitude.
That's it was a very basic.
But it's the easy stuff.
A very basic instinct of your fullback. I mean, I look at fullbacks when I looked up at fullbacks, and I still look at fullbacks. I always say straight away, like one of the things I'd be looking at. And I would like to think I was a reasonable judge of players. I'd say, how does he recover? And how is he? I want to see him up. I want to see him join now and crossing it and whipping him into the box and all that. But how does he sense danger when it goes behind him? And that's one of the first ones I would want. And now the game is turned towards it's more important how quickly they get forward and how they use the ball and so on. But I still I was just baffled by that one the other night.
That's always been a weakness in his game.
Yeah, but it
not
was
just his recovery, just in terms of how he defends his back post area. The first game of the season, Fulham, that back post cross went in. Mitrovic just kind of swatted him out of the way and headed it. Pride in terms of.
But he was playing against their best player, or the current golden boy, the Kvaratskhelia, the Georgian lad, and yet he didn't seem to have that. I've got a bit of responsibility here tonight as well to stop this lad doing so well, and they can't rely on Gomez to be getting out, and that didn't seem to click with him when your man picked up the ball and went to play 1-2. He just stood watching it, as did Gomez. It was just, I was just startled. But it's a combination of things. I do think the injury. I think, and at the moment, the spotlight is on them. I think it was pointed out in one of the papers today that Manchester United were in big trouble and Chelsea were in big trouble a couple of weeks ago. It was all the spotlight was on them, and now it's moved on because the media needs somewhere to go, and it's moved on to Liverpool, and they've got to deal with that now. But the manager is not in danger. And he's been such a great manager for Liverpool. He's a great manager for Dortmund and Mainz too. But I think Liverpool.
Depends what you mean, though. People are saying to me, are they in big trouble? Depends what you mean by big trouble.
Yeah,
are they in big trouble in terms that they're going to head down towards kind of mid-table mediocrity? No. But are they in big trouble in terms of actually putting up a challenge to Man City this season?
6 points
Absolutely.
off. 6 points
that's
off
what I mean by big trouble. Will they be beyond 7-8 points of City? That's
I think
trouble.
so. I think there's a danger they could be 12-15 points behind
that's big trouble.
City
That's a massive
and that's the problem for them. That Manchester City have just had 2 draws so far.
Yeah.
And the 4 wins and 2 draws, whereas Liverpool, what are they? 2-3-1, isn't it? Liverpool have had they've 9 points.
9 for 6.
Yeah. So
I don't even think it's the points they're behind. I just feel as if Liverpool get all their players fit Man City keep all their players fit. I think there's a significant distance now between them that hasn't been there over the past couple of years because of the individual qualities of players Liverpool have had in those key areas of the pitch.
Yeah.
And they haven't, for me at the moment, they haven't got it. And that's, for me, the gap's got a little bit bigger because I've got to say, I think it's a massive OG what the FA have done calling the fixtures off.
Yeah.
I think they got it all wrong on a load of different levels. You know, if they were... I don't know what the initial thinking was. We've got to be careful here, you know, in terms of a very sensitive situation. But I think very quickly, I think there's been a huge outcry from certainly people within the UK. I know a few people over there, and football people, Brian, in terms of what an opportunity missed for people to go to their football clubs together collectively
and to show their respect.
Yeah, exactly. That's the only way they can be seen to be shown their respect.
I checked. Miguel Delaney was doing the reporting and talking to different people involved. And so the Premier League meeting on the Friday was only 20 minutes long.
Yeah.
And in effect, the point was the Queen, along with William, is an FA patron. And that's going to be our guiding light in the decision. And that was as short as the meeting was. So in effect, wrong. That was their logic.
So wrong. I don't think there's any logic to be honest with you. I think they've really missed a real...
But there may have been... Their logic may have been that they were afraid that there would be some misbehaviour at some grounds around the country in a lack of respect, and that they didn't want to see that happening. That may have been the logic, but I agree with you that I think they got it wrong. That all levels of football were stopped completely. It's almost bizarre, and like I did see somebody sent me a copy of a funny tweet where somebody said they had 96 years to ask Queen Elizabeth did she want the matches called off the weekend after she died. And I mean, I don't think anyone that's involved in sport would ever want matches. It's always something I thought here about games and often particularly about GAA games, about people calling off the matches at the weekend after somebody dies. I always think that's the last thing that they would want to happen if they're around, because people love going to sport, they love the opportunity to go, and they loved going. I mean, the most joyous things that we often do are go to sport with some of our families and whatever. And why would you stop the games and not allow people have that? So I think it was a ridiculous. It was the wrong decision. But then I don't understand English or British society well enough to over pontificate on it. But
it's the very same as over here. I know not marking all that, but generally speaking, people, I think we're on the same level. So I think the reaction would have been the same over here in terms of people wanting to kind of come together with your mate's family and having the occasion maybe to present yourself in the right way and pay your respects whatever way it is.
Yeah.
And you become so sensitive to that 1 minute silence now. I mean, nowadays it seems to be this constant like hand clap thing.
It's gone to applause.
It's totally out of keeping. Some of the hand clapping that's going on for me is all wrong. Doesn't strike the right now whatsoever. That's happened recently in relation to a couple of like tragic deaths over in England. There's been like clapping at the games. For me, like that's I think that's the wrong.
And on towards the night at Shamrock Rovers game, that silence was observed, I would say, beautifully by both sets of fans on the night in relation to the horrible incident in Tala with the 3 children, and the Djurgården's supporters, who had been more than boisterous, I believe, all day in town and in the stadium when they were there, when they were told what it was about. They must have been told in advance. I think there may have been an announcement, the Swedish, but they behaved impeccably also, and it was great. It was right, and I actually noticed there was 1 or 2 little attempts at applause and nobody joined in, and it was right. You're right on that. You're dead right on that. But yeah,
well, they'll have to see what happens next weekend, because there's now a sense that, not from a respect point of view, but just logistics, all the police.
I think that's a little bit different, but this weekend...
that exacerbates the decision to miss 1 round and now potentially a 2nd round, and you got a World Cup and you don't have the space. So I don't know how they'll figure it out. Somebody texted in, Kenny, and they say, I mean this seriously, because you're going to say, make a joke about it. How would you try and mark Erling Haaland?
Yeah, but I couldn't. Well, I wouldn't, you know. I suppose I understand
Not on your
the
own.
question.
Not on your own.
Exactly, like these type of players. For me personally, like different. Should get Virgil van Dijk in here and ask him that question because he's got the physical attributes maybe to go up against him 1v1.
He said he didn't want to come in.
So all, not even you, Joe. Not even you.
There's a bit of video to look at with the manager.
I know you got the numbers all the top, whatever. But no, it was always a collective thing, always for me against any centre forward. How would keep this fella quiet? It was always about me, the fella alongside me centre half, me full back to me right hand side, and that bit of screen in front. It was always a collective effort, but no different, to be honest with you. People scratch their heads. Oh, Haaland, how did this fella's unstoppable? Well, he's not unstoppable, to be honest. It's the same things any top class centre forward. Just being bright, being alert, knowing where he wants to go, starting a position, good information, having people around you. He's got the advantage, of course, Haaland, of having some exceptional players in front of him, the likes of De Bruyne and Gundogan. You have to factor all that thing in as well. But you just got to do the maths as a defender, as you would with any centre forward. How quick is he? How quick is he over the ground over 15 yards? How much of a starting position do I have to give myself? Does he want to play off the shoulder? Does he come in short? Does he like to drift to his left, his right? Where is his preference? All those type of things. Can I compete with him in the air? No. Well, I better get on his toes. I better get into his ribs, stop him jumping early. All the basic stuff that you'd have to compute into get up if you're up against any centre forward, and he's obviously at the very top level, but it's the same process as a defender. You know what I mean? High line, drop off into the space, don't give him the space run into, let him have it to his feet, let your centre midfielder come and deal with him. I'll drop into the space, I won't actually go and compete with him, to be honest. So all of that stuff, but that's the challenge, I suppose, for the defenders up against him. It's a great challenge to have. I'm glad I don't have it.
Yeah, I can imagine. How will Graham Potter do at Chelsea, do you think?
Well, we don't know, but every manager that's been at Chelsea since the Abramovich time, where are they up at 14, is it?
14 since 03.
14, has been there and thereabouts of winning trophies. Most of them have won trophies. One or two, maybe, I think, the second places. Avon Grant, my former nemesis with Israel, but other than that, so you're always going to be in the running with the quality of the players that they have. So that's the starting position. He's done a great job at Brighton. His career has been outlined in more detail in recent times because of how well Brighton have been doing. Really interesting background, not a great playing career. Went on to work in the university system and in England in the whole. And it was very successful with college teams that hadn't been successful prior to that, and then went off on that journey in Sweden and did really well, and then came to Swansea and took over from Chris Hughton at Brighton. And the first two seasons at Brighton, he didn't do much better than Chris Hughton had done. They're still down in those lower positions, escaping relegation. But last year was a brilliant season for them. He finished 9th and played very good football. And has played very good football, wants to be on the front foot. I saw them last year at Spurs, a live game, and they were very, very impressive in how they played. Controlled Tottenham at the time so well. Spurs never had a shot in the match. It was almost unbelievable. I think maybe 10 minutes to go, Kane got a half an opportunity getting a shot. But they controlled possession, tactically astute, and very, very impressive. And since then, the bit of business they did with Chelsea in terms of selling Cucurella for however the money was 60 million, and Basuma goes to Spurs. To me, it showed the weakness of Chelsea at the time that they went that far to sign a player who's had one season in the Premier League. An impressive season, it has to be said, but it was one season. I didn't think he was that good. I thought he was good, but so they got 60 million, great piece of business for them, when they already had 2 or 3 very good left wing backs. And Basuma goes to Spurs, and they've started the season like it's been no bother to them. Casida, I think the lads come into the middle of the pitch, and he's done great. They've juggled around the rest of it. And
you mentioned there, Brian, but you saw the Spurs game. I'd referenced the Liverpool game as well, the Chelsea game that I saw last year. I'd be the same as you. First couple of years he came in, talking the right, saying all the right type of things in modern game, modern approach, open, expansive. We've heard that a lot. So you're thinking, right, talk is cheap. Didn't see it a lot in terms of initially, but last year for me, probably similar to Brian. I looked at him last year and thought, oh, something special happening here, because they went to Chelsea and Liverpool and did the same. Actually took the ball off those teams for long periods and actually dictated things. And I was actually looking at thinking, hold on, this is a fella who's just not, you know, head in the clouds, let's play the beautiful game. This is a lad who's actually coaching his team as well, giving good information.
Brilliantly coached, what I saw. Yeah.
Real kind of balance to the team, real cohesion in terms of what they're looking to do. And players...
Attacking players, defending very well and playing sometimes.
And players getting better,
positions.
Brian. I'm looking at individual players, looking and thinking, oh, he's getting better every year. He's actually improving players. How's he doing that on the training pitch, or is he getting into their heads as well? And he seems to be a little bit of one of them as well, because he hasn't got the CV. And actually I'd love to see him do well for one reason alone, so we don't have to listen to this, well, how can Chelsea go for this fella? He hasn't proven himself. You know, he's no experience at the top level, but it's as weak as argument as I've ever heard. I mean, if you took that logic to its, you know, to its end result, you'd never give a young manager an opportunity. And when they
haven't been given too many. I mean, there's been no English manager who's won a trophy in England since Harry Redknapp in 2008 with Portsmouth in the Cup. I think that's one I saw. I went, what? But it is the case, you know. So
they're taking a slight risk with him. But
how will he do? The question: how will he do? I think they'll compete for trophies. The big one is, and you were discussing it earlier on the papers one, will they give him time? Will they let him out? They said they're giving him a 5-year contract, said he's not under pressure to make the Champions League this year. They want him to change an ethos of the club. Now, the only thing I was thinking about that, I've seen that stuff before at Chelsea. I saw it going back to 2007-8 period. I was over there, I was doing part of my pro licence. I was at Chelsea for a few days. And at that stage, we were bringing in kids from all over the place. They were bulking up the academy. I've seen that today in the papers, reports on how they've signed some very special underage players. I saw all that before with them, and they use it then. They loan them out and they don't play them in the team. Now there might be a change of attitude, and Todd Bowley wants them to start using their own and bring them in. He wouldn't let Hudson-Odoi go and all that. That's all right. We got to win matches, and if the young fellas aren't winning the matches, Chelsea won't play the young fellas if they're not good enough to win the matches in the short term. It won't be about the long term. They'll want to be. So I'd put some of that aside with the ethos of it. I just think on Tuchel, can I say, it is directly related. I think Tuchel was hard done by. I'd say he's a spiky character. Looking at him, he's fallen out with a few people, fell out with fellas at PSG and Dortmund after a while. I'd say it'd be easy enough in PSG to fall out with people. I'd say to do your head in there, all the egos around outside of the manager. But he did seem spiky. But I think a lot of the stuff he did was kind of dismissed over the last couple of weeks. What he did with the Abramovich thing last year, when they were in trouble and they couldn't travel on planes and the money was being reduced and the players were not being re-signed, and how he handled all that, I thought he did a really good job, and his personality came through very much. His identity and empathy with what was really important in life came out. Now Chelsea, I think, have been busy spinning stories about him, which is what happens. I know about it, my own scene and around the Irish scene. They have been busy putting out this kind of stuff that, you know, he was living in the dressing room a bit. He was fighting with players. He wasn't talking to players. He wasn't communicating. He didn't get on with Todd Bowley. He was going into himself. His personal life was a problem. And they're spinning this stuff to justify what they did. For a manager who won the Champions League for them, that in a relatively short space of time, when they didn't know really where they were with Frank Lampard. And last year it was fine line stuff. They lost 2 finals on penalty kicks, and you know how brilliant they were against Spurs. Another match finished up 2-2 in. Was it match weekend 2 in the league? Was it weekend 2 or weekend 3? Now I did the match when they were beaten 3-0 by Leeds, and they were brutal. The goalkeeper caused them fierce problems, and they couldn't match the energy of Leeds and the chase and Harrison and straightforward stuff with, you know, Aronson running around, and didn't deal with that well. But then I was at the match the next week when they beat Leicester. They were down to 10 men. Gallagher got put off in the first half, and they handled that really well. Sterling played I thought they played really well, the team of 10 men. There was no shortage of, and he was sitting in the stand, Tuchel. There was no shortage of desire or organisation or passion in the team, and the crowd were right with it.
They were very critical of the dressing room, though, Brian. That's what surprised me.
After each result, he had been
the last couple of weeks.
He definitely looked spiky.
Midweek, that's very dangerous. That's almost like your last shot, isn't it? Yeah. Your last throw of the dice. Once you start digging the dressing room out and hanging them out a little bit, maybe with some justification in terms of individual performance, but to publicly come out and start pointing the finger at the dressing room, lack of motivation, application, lack of quality. For me, that's almost like, oof, dear, you've got to be very careful there. So,
before we wrap up, I knew clock is completely against us. I knew this had happened. You both watched Shamrock Rovers on Thursday. Brian, I know you were doing the game for Virgin at Tallaght Stadium. 0-0 draw against Djurgårdens. Both teams had their chances. Bradley afterwards said he was frustrated, felt Rovers could have won the game. So the other game in that group, Ghent and Molde, was a 0-0 draw. Rovers have Finn Arps today, and then they have Ghent on Thursday. So your read on the early exchanges here from Rovers' point of view, are they well able to compete at this level? That would suggest they should be.
Yeah, well, in advance of the group, I thought Djurgårdens, of the advance of the first match, I thought Djurgårdens would have the best chance to get a result. I just think Ghent coming from the Belgian league would be a better standard league than the Swedish league. Yeah. There's more quality players emerge from it, and when I've seen matches in Belgium, obviously it's a better quality. Molde have a lot of experience in European stuff, and I just kind of think they might be a little bit ahead, but it's hard to know. Both of Glint have been very impressive in the last couple of seasons in Europe, and Molde are a similar level with both of Glint. So I thought that was great. I thought on the night they played well. Myself and Kenny have discussed Rovers. He's covered a lot of the matches in Europe already this season. I thought they played with the right amount of conservatism in the first half. Didn't make any chances. It was interesting selection. I think Stephen Bradley was thinking about the Finn Harps game today in the selection, not playing Rory Gaffney. Centre forward played Aaron Green in the match, and no, Jack Bourne didn't come on in the second half. Who Graham Burke wasn't involved in the game, wasn't his best 11. He said he can't just consider this game, each game on its own. Yeah. You've got to use the squad, and he used confidence in all the squad. I think with the best team, they may have won the match tonight. They made a few clear-cut chances in the first half, but overall I felt it was a very fair result. Right. They started well, Djurgårdens, and they finished well, and it'll be a tougher task over there for Shamrock Rovers, but they will compete. The next two games are away. Yeah. It'll be hard to get something from them, but if they get something from either of those games, it'll set themselves up for the second set of three games.
This 17-year-old Justin Ferzaj, that the best pronunciation? Ferzaj, excuse me. Rory Gaffney said he won't be in Ireland for long. How good is he, Kenny?
Yeah, my heart sinks a little bit, to be honest, when you hear that.
Line like that, yeah. It's like the ultimate thing. He won't be here for long, yeah. Yeah,
it's that young talent again, isn't it? We all get excited, kind of burst on the scene, and we think, Irish talent, fantastic. And before we know, it's like a bar of slippery soap, isn't it? Slips through our fingers, and it's on its way. I would like us just to keep hold of these players for a little bit longer, as best we can.
It's a problem with the league now, Kenny. That young players are not going away as early as they used to. Obviously, they can't go to England until they're 18. The Brexit issue has been good for the League of Ireland. It's meant more of that quality. You said there was a group of 20 of the best 16-year-olds were going away. Now they're playing the League of Ireland, and they're breaking through into the teams. But what we see is so many of them not getting too long in the teams before they're gone, and the agents.
I'm not necessarily sure it's the best decision for them. I've got to be honest with you, particularly when you look at the environment now. Say Farouk in particular, the situation Rovers playing regular European football, the amount of exposure these young players are getting, the experience that they get in European football now in terms of their development, Brian, as well as the environment they're in, say at Shamrock Rovers it is in particular that you're talking about. So for me, like if I'm a parent or an agent around these players, as much as the talent that they have, I understand they got ambitions and they want to go and prove themselves, and that might be over in England or wherever it is. But for me, like, don't be in such a rush to get in there. When you're in a good situation at the moment and you're improving, you're developing, you're in a good place, you're growing as a person. Anyway, these are only kids. Like, we haven't even talked about the emotional development.
Agents are very busy now. Comes back on money, Joe, and all that. And
agents have to look at the bigger picture, the longer game as well. If they're looking after their players, after their best interests.
Yeah,
They should be
that's
talking about
okay.
the
We
same
could
things.
talk about that because we're not
They
agents.
should be, Brian.
Yeah, but they're not. They're busy trying to get the players away and make money in the short term. The club gets money. The clubs don't necessarily want them going either. I mean, I've seen whether Boas wanted Young Devoy to go this year. I would doubt it because it's so important in the season. Young Darragh Burns went and Pats before they play the European games to go. But the players are afraid that the chance won't come either if they don't take it then. And obviously there's a wage issue and so on. But I do agree with Kenny that if they get to if they could get to 20, 21 and they've a couple of, and they have the physicality then to survive in England as well as a bit of experience.
Yeah.
And they obviously have the quality, they have ability. Now they're going to, a lot of them are not going in the top two divisions anymore. They're now going into the third division. Obviously a little bit of the Italian stuff and I'd gone to Como in Italy. And
this European avenue that's been opened up now, Brian, obviously these lads could progress and go over and end up at top Premiership so I'm playing European football. The reality is the majority of players who go over, they won't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So the actual, I never played European one game of European football in my whole career. I wouldn't say I have any regrets. I don't necessarily look back. But I do look at these lads now getting 10, 20, 30, 40 appearances on the European stage, Europa Conference, wherever it is, and I think, well, that's amazing. There's some fantastic memories there and experience there. I would have been in a rush. I would be rushed to pack a suitcase and head away from that. I'll be bracing that a little bit more and trying to take.
Yeah, that's part of the challenge is, can we keep, they're getting into the teams now, can we keep them in the league for longer here? The more mature and the fees will be bigger.
And Ferzai, very good.
Very good. I'm impressed with the other night. Really, we come on against Pats earlier in the season in the tough enough match. Played very well. He was great in the Ferenc Forest match, the last game. Started that game.
What kind of player is he?
Well. Very neat, tidy, confident midfield player. Wants to get forward. Has lovely balance. But two-footed, gets forward, looks like he's a good shot on him from midfield, breaking from midfield. I think the match the other night, there was a lot of work to be done. He was having to work hard on the defensive side, dealing with they had a bit of quality around middle. Anderson, number 7, and he was very clever to find the space. But he's an excellent attacking player, midfield player, but a very good size already for a 17-year-old. Yeah.
We'll finish on a lovely text in from Carl in Cork. Kenny has a lovely self-deprecating manner. He was a much better footballer than he gives himself credit for. Intelligent centre-back, lovely technical ability, calm on the ball, an ability to distribute really well.
He let himself down about halfway.
He's exposed himself there.
Before you said technical ability, I might have bought into it to an extent. Nobody's kidding ourselves here in terms of a high level of technical ability.
Well, Carl in Cork was impressed with your level of technical ability, so there you go.
And he's right.
And he's right.
Heading, maybe heading. Is that a technique? Heading a football?
Of course it is. A dying art.
To a small degree,
Brian Kerr, Kenny Cunningham, thank you both so much for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe.
You wasted 20 minutes of that show to start. Wasted it. Going all nostalgic on us.